I never imagined that a simple pink plastic plate could be used as a weapon until the day my mother-in-law, Linda Matthews, turned it into one. It still amazes me how something so harmless could cut so deep without ever leaving a mark. Looking back, I should have realized something wasn't right the moment Linda insisted on hosting Thanksgiving dinner this year. In all 5 years of my marriage, she had never once invited me into her home willingly, let alone offered to cook a meal that included me. Maybe she's trying to make peace, my husband Michael had said hopefully when the invitation arrived. His optimism was sweet, but painfully naive. I'd been around Linda long enough to know she never did anything without a plan. If she was being kind, it was because she was setting the stage for something. Still, I agreed to go, partly because Michael looked so hopeful, and partly because I was tired of being labeled the difficult daughter-in-law who avoided family gatherings. So there we were, driving up the long stone driveway toward the sprawling Victorian mansion that had been in the Matthews family for generations. It loomed ahead like a monument to tradition and judgment. "Remember," Michael said softly as he squeezed my hand, "Mom's trying. Let's just have one peaceful Thanksgiving." Peaceful, I repeated under my breath, clutching the bourbon pecan pie I'd spent hours baking. If Linda wanted peace, I could manage that, at least for a few hours. The house was already buzzing when we arrived. Michael's sister, Emma, and her husband were chasing their 3 sugar-high kids through the hallway. His brother, Tom, had brought a new girlfriend. And Linda's sister, Carol, my least favorite aunt-in-law, was holding court in the living room, wine glass in hand, loudly speculating about when Michael and I were finally going to give Linda some grandchildren. "Michael, sweetheart," Linda exclaimed, gliding toward us with arms outstretched, pearls gleaming against her autumn-themed sweater. She enveloped her son in a hug so dramatic it could have won awards, completely ignoring me. Then, finally turning her gaze my way, she offered a smile as thin as rice paper. "Oh, Sarah," she said, her eyes landing on the pie in my hands. "You brought dessert. How thoughtful. I'll just put this with the real pies." Before I could respond, she whisked the dish from my hands and disappeared into the kitchen. I took a deep breath. "You can do this, Sarah. It's just one dinner." Michael was already deep in conversation with his siblings, laughter echoing down the hall. I lingered at the edge of the room, feeling like an extra in someone else's movie. Always watching. Never really included. Still no baby bump. "I see." I turned to find Carol smiling at me, the kind of smile that hid knives. "You know," she continued, "my neighbor's daughter tried this wonderful fertility tea. I think I'll go help Linda in the kitchen," I said quickly, cutting her off. If that didn't tell you how much I wanted to escape, nothing would. When I entered the kitchen, the smell of turkey and roasted vegetables filled the air. Linda stood at the counter, basting the bird with precise, almost military focus. "Oh, I've got everything under control," she said without looking up. "Why don't you go set the table? The plates are already laid out." Grateful for a simple task, I stepped into the dining room, only to freeze. Every place setting gleamed with one of Linda's prized Royal Doulton china plates, polished to perfection. Every place setting except one. At the far end of the table, my usual seat, sat a bright pink plastic children's plate covered with cartoon animals. For a moment, I couldn't move. My throat went dry as heat crept up my neck. This wasn't a mistake. This was deliberate, calculated, a message in the cruelest form possible. "Oh, good, you found your plate," Linda said from behind me, her tone syrupy sweet. "I thought it suited you, seeing as you have the maturity of a child when it comes to starting a family." The words sliced through me. I swallowed hard, forcing my voice to stay calm. "Linda, I think you know perfectly well why Michael and I don't have children yet." She waved a dismissive hand. "Oh yes, your excuses about timing and careers. Meanwhile, my poor son gets older while his selfish wife refuses to make him a father." "Stop," I said softly. My voice was shaking, but I met her eyes. "You don't know anything about our situation." "I know enough," she snapped, her fake sweetness vanishing. "I know my son would be a wonderful father. So if there's a problem, it's clearly you. Too focused on work, too selfish, maybe even too broken." Each insult landed like a physical blow, but I refused to cry. Instead, I reached into my purse, fingers brushing against the envelope I had been carrying for weeks. "You're right about one thing, Linda," I said, pulling it out. "There is a medical reason why we don't have children yet. Would you like to know what it is?" Her eyes narrowed, but before she could reply, Michael called from the living room. "Mom, is dinner ready? We're starving out here." Linda's mask returned instantly. "Coming, darling," she sang, turning back to me with a sharp whisper. "Put that envelope away. It's Thanksgiving, and I won't have you ruining it with your dramatics." She swept out of the room, leaving me trembling but resolute. She had no idea. This envelope wasn't drama. It was truth, the kind that would shatter every cruel assumption she'd ever made about me. By the time the family gathered around the table, the air was thick with chatter and the smell of roasted turkey. Michael sat beside me, finally noticing the ridiculous pink plate. His brow furrowed, confusion flickering in his eyes. "Mom," he began as Linda placed the turkey on the table like it was a crown jewel. "What's with Sarah's plate?" Linda's smile could have curdled milk. "Oh, that. I just thought since Sarah isn't ready for adult responsibilities, she might prefer something age-appropriate." The laughter died instantly. Even the children went quiet. Michael's jaw tightened, but years of conditioning kept him silent. I could see the battle in his eyes, the urge to defend me, and the fear of upsetting his mother. I wasn't afraid anymore. "Actually, Linda," I said calmly, pulling out the envelope, "I think it's time everyone knows the real reason you don't have grandchildren from Michael yet." "Sarah," Michael whispered, placing a hand on my arm. "Maybe not now." "No, Michael. Now," I said firmly. "Your mother has humiliated me for years, blamed me for something that wasn't my fault, and she's done it in front of your entire family. I think Thanksgiving is the perfect time to tell them what we're truly thankful for. Answers." Linda's grip on the turkey platter tightened. "No one wants to hear your excuses during dinner," she hissed. "They're not excuses," I said, opening the envelope. "They're medical test results from your son's fertility specialist." The room went completely still. The ticking of the old hallway clock seemed deafening. For the first time since I'd known her, Linda looked afraid. "Michael," she whispered, "are you really going to let her humiliate you like this?" Michael looked at her, then at me. And finally, after years of silence, he spoke. "Mom," he said quietly, "you need to hear this. We've tried to tell you before, but you never listened." He nodded to me, his eyes steady. I took a deep breath and unfolded the papers. 3 years ago, I began, my voice unwavering. "We started trying for a baby. Nothing happened. After a year, we got tested. Do you want to know what we found out, Linda?" The only sound in the room was the faint crackle of the fireplace. Even Carol leaned forward, her smirk replaced by open curiosity. I held Linda's gaze as I spoke the truth that would change the dynamic of this family forever. Because sometimes, karma doesn't knock. It shows up at Thanksgiving dinner, wrapped neatly inside a plain white envelope. "Your perfect fertile stock, son," I continued, my voice gaining strength. Has a condition called ospermia. It means he produces no sperm. None. Zero. We've been going through medical treatments, looking at options, dealing with this massive life challenge together as a couple. While you've been busy buying my children's plates and making snide comments about my supposedly broken body, Linda's face had gone from red to white. The turkey platter wobbled dangerously in her hands. That's impossible," she stammered. "The Matthews men have always been fertile." I finished for her. "Well, here are the test results. Would you like to see them?" The doctor explained it's a genetic condition, probably passed down through the maternal line. The turkey platter finally slipped from Linda's grasp. Michael jumped up to catch it, barely saving Thanksgiving dinner from ending up on his mother's expensive Persian rug. The loud clatter seemed to snape everyone out of their shocked silence. "Oh my God, Mom!" Emma spoke first, her voice full of horror. "All these years you've been horrible to Sarah, and it was actually a genetic condition I passed to my son." Linda's voice was barely a whisper. She sank into her chair, her perfect hostess facade crumbling. Why didn't you tell me?" "We tried," Michael said, setting the turkey safely on the table. "Remember last Christmas when we asked to speak to you privately and Emma's birthday in March? And when we stopped by in June, every time you started attacking Sarah about not giving you grandchildren, before we could explain, I have the dates written down," I added, pulling out a small notebook. Every time we tried to tell you, every dismissive comment, every gift of fertility tea or parenting books, every not-so-subtle jab, I wrote it all down. Would you like to hear what you said to me at Easter dinner? Tears were rolling down Linda's cheeks now. Her carefully applied makeup, leaving dark tracks on her face. The children washed wide-eyed as their indomitable grandmother crumbled before them. I need a moment, Linda pushed back from the table, nearly knocking over her chair in her haste to leave the room. The sound of her heels clicking on the hardwood floors echoed through the silent house, followed by the slam of her bedroom door. Well, Carol said into the awkward silence, I suppose we should say grace. Tom's girlfriend let out a nervous giggle, which set off Emma's kids, and suddenly the tension broke. As Michael's father quietly went upstairs to check on Linda, I looked down at my pink plastic plate and felt the weight lift from my shoulders. 3 years of blame, shame, and accusations finally ended by one envelope of medical truth. The rest of Thanksgiving dinner passed in a blur of awkward small talk and half-hearted attempts at normally. Linda never came back downstairs. Her husband brought her a plate but returned looking grim and shaking his head. When Carol tried to ask how she was doing, he picked up my food on the pink plastic plate, no longer feeling the sting of the intended insult. Michael kept his hand on my knee under the table. Assilent gesture of support that meant more than any words could express. As people started making excuses to leave early, Emma pulled me aside in the kitchen while I was packing up my untouched peas and pie. I'm so sorry, Sarah, she whispered, glancing toward the stairs. All these years I should have said something when Mom was being cruel to you. I never wanted Toby on her bad side. I managed a small smile. I understand your mother can be intimidating. Still, Emma shook her head. What you've both been going through, the treatments, the disappointment, and Mom making it worse every step of the way. It must have been awful. Before I could respond, we heard footsteps on the stairs. Linda appeared in the kitchen doorway, her face scrubbed clean of makeup, looking older and smaller than I'd ever seen her. Sarah, her voice was hoarse. Could we talk, please? Emma squeezed my arm and slipped out, leaving me alone with my mother-in-law. Linda moved to the kitchen island, picking up the pink plate I'd left there. I bought this plate to hurt you, she said quietly, turning it in her hands. I spent weeks planning how to humiliate you at Thanksgiving, thinking I was defending my son's honor, his legacy. I never imagined. Her voice broke. That you were actually hurting him too. It finished for her. She nodded, tears welling up again. All these years my own son was suffering, and instead of being there for him, for both of you, I was making everything worse. I was so convinced I knew everything about my children. Michael wanted to tell you from the beginning, I said, surprising myself by wanting to ease her guilt. I just couldn't find the words. You've always seen him as this perfect son, and he didn't want to disappoint me. Linda set the plate down with shaking hands. Oh God, what kind of mother am I? Making my own child afraid to tell me about his pain. We stood in silence for a moment, years of hostility shifting into something different. Not quite forgiveness, but perhaps understanding the treatments. Linda finally said, Are they? We're exploring options, I explained. IVF with a sperm donor, possibly adoption. We're taking it one step at a time. Linda nodded slowly. Whatever you decide, whatever help you need. I know I have no right tosk for a place in your lives after how I've behaved. But if you let me, I'd like to be there to support you both properly this time. Michael's voice came from the doorway, making us both jump. We like that, Mom, but things need to change. Linda turned to her son, and for the first time, I saw her really look at him, not as the perfect son she'd imagined, but as the real man he'd become. I know, sweetheart. They will. I promise. 2 months later, we sat in another doctor's office, this time with Linda beside us. She held my hand as the fertility specialist explained our options for IVF, asked intelligent questions about success rates, and didn't once mention the Matthews family legacy. When we left the clinic, she pulled out a small gift bag. I got you something. What? Got rid of something, really? Inside was the pink plastic plate broken into pieces. I'm having the Royal Doulton set divided between all my children, she said, including you, Sarah. No more family heirlooms being held hostage for grandchildren. No more conditions on being part of this family. I felt Michael relax beside me, years of pressure lifting from his shoulders. Thanks, Mom. That evening, as we got ready for bed, Michael paused by our fertility calendar. You know what's funny? For years, I was terrified of disappointing my mother by telling her the truth. But now that it's out, now you can finally just be yourself. I finished wrapping my arms around him. Yeah. He smiled, looking more at peace than I'd seen him in years. All it took was one envelope and my brave wife standing up to the dragon. I thought about Linda, about how sometimes the strongest people are the ones who can admit they were wrong and truly change, about how families aren't built on perfect genetics or hair china, but on love, understanding, and forgiveness. You know, I said, "Your mom asked if we come over for Christmas dinner? Are you ready for that?" I smiled, thinking of the shattered pink plate. Yeah, I think I am. Besides, she promised to serve everyone on paper plates this year. Said something about starting fresh, making new traditions. Michael laughed, and I joined him, the sound echoing through our home, a home that would someday be filled with children one way or another, surrounded by family who had learned that love doesn't come with conditions, and healing can begin with a broken plate and an open,